Some incredible scenes coming in over the weekend from Australia, the land down under, as tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of Australians took to the streets in a national march for Australia. This was held over several locations in Melbourne and Sydney. People coming to the streets to show their deep concern over the crisis of mass immigration that is flooding Australia. And as many people in Ireland and the UK will know, this is something that we have been protesting against for quite some time now. Now, most of the audience that will be on this channel will be from the UK and from Ireland, but there's Australians watching in here too. But the principle is exactly the same. The Australians are going through exactly what the British and the Irish and the Germans and every European country, the French, are experiencing at this time. Sweden, the list goes on and on and on. So I want to show you some clips that were taken from the protests yesterday, and of course some of the reasoning behind why people were taking to the streets. And it wouldn't be complete without a politician or two describing the scenes that you will see before you as some kind of far right extremism, when in reality it's just concerned parents, mothers, fathers, grandparents, children taking to the streets, concerned about their very future. So let's have a look at this little news clip to begin with, and then we're going to hear from some of the people explaining really what the root problems are with what we're seeing in Australia at this time. And I'm sure many Irish and many British people will feel what is being said here very, very acutely.
Australia assembled near Central Station around 12 o'clock today. And what became immediately apparent were the huge numbers of people who turned up. At least 5,000, maybe more, took part in today's march. They assembled near Central Station and then marched down Broadway here to Victoria Park, a short distance, just a couple of kilometres along Broadway. They were shepherded by big police numbers who kept them in check, but there was no problems with the crowd. There was no violence, despite what some people feared. Most of the speakers here today have called for a limit or an end to the current migration. The fear that people have here at the moment is that there's so many people coming into Australia from overseas, it's affecting jobs and it's affecting housing. Too much migration.
And just, it's worth, I mean, like, these are scenes straight out of what we've been seeing in Dublin, in Ireland, in Cork, in Limerick, in Letterkenny, in Sligo at the weekend. People coming onto the streets in exactly the same way, no violence, children, families concerned about the damage that their government is doing to them and will do to future generations in the case of Dublin protests or Cork protests for Irish families. The same is exactly happening. You can see it yourself, police presence, but no violence. Peace-loving people taking to the streets, waving their flag, they're national patriots. You know, they're not doing anything wrong. They only want security for their generation and the next generation.
In your view?
It's not just that in particular, but there's no room, there's no infrastructure.
We just need to have immigration under control. There is not enough housing for our own kids. I am petrified for my grandchildren.
Love migration, okay? I'm from a family of immigrants as well. The point is, how many you bring in the country? Where do you house them?
There were fears today's march could get hijacked by far-right groups. That doesn't appear that's happened. And in fact, if there is another march for Australia, given what's happened here today, they're sure to get even bigger numbers.
There you see it. I mean, like, you know, does that sound familiar? Anyone out there? Does that sound familiar? It's happening here in Ireland. And this is what's been documented on this channel pretty much since it has begun. So we're going to hear also from a commentator here who was brought on to describe the reasoning behind this. And notice what this man said also, that if there are more marches like this, they're sure to get bigger. That's why you'll see massive pushback against this and massive resistance against this and a huge narrative change against this from the mainstream media and the government. They cannot see this grow. They cannot afford to see this movement grow.
And it's not a coincidence that this is not just happening in Australia, but it's happening across the West. It was only today in the UK that they had similar protests. And so at some point in time, you have to say, maybe it's not conspiracy. Maybe people aren't making it up. Maybe people aren't racist. Maybe there's something real and legitimate as to why people are showing up and fronting at these protests. All I want to point out is that there is nothing wrong with having a national identity. And unfortunately, in Australia, we're having an identity crisis. Once upon a time, we knew what it meant to be an Australian. Today, there are plenty of Australians, including people who have migrated and assimilated here, who understood that. The point is, why can we not point out certain facts and certain truths without being called a racist?
Again, does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar to any British people that are listening to this, to any Irish people that are listening to this right now? You don't know what it means to be who you are anymore. The country that you live in is being changed. You're seeing it changing in real time before your very eyes, and not for the better. And not necessarily that you're against immigration, but you're against the country being flooded with people when there's no infrastructure, there's no housing, the medical services are at breaking point, education is crumbling, everything is just in complete disarray, and yet the floodgates are open for people to come piling into the country because of our governments.
It is true. Everyone is allowed to have a homeland except for us, apparently. And there's nothing wrong with pointing out that we are taking in migrants at ungodly levels from countries that, unfortunately, in 2025 are finding a very hard time to assimilate to our Australian identity and our Australian culture. And it is not racist for pointing that out, because we will lose our home, we will lose our people, we will lose our culture, and that's sadly what's happening. And there's nothing wrong with saying, let's not have that.
As she said, ungodly levels of people flooding into the countries. This is another clip of some of the people that were peacefully protesting yesterday in Sydney, in Australia. As you can see, the demographics there, there's no trouble, there's no violence, there's no extremism whatsoever. Just normal people out protesting and taking a stand for not just their own futures, but for the futures of their children and for the next generations. So we'll hear from a government gaslighter. This is Jacinta Allen, who's the Premier of Victoria in Australia. They suffered probably some of the worst conditions on planet Earth when the lockdowns were in effect from 2020 onwards, notoriously bad in Victoria, especially in Melbourne, Australia. So here she is speaking out against these people and branding them all sorts of smears.
Around children in respect, values and understanding, you get a big reward as a society. And the reward is this. When those children see the news and they see that there was something called a March for Australia, they'll know straight away it's not a very Australian march at all.
You saw the footage, you've just seen the clips, you've seen the news reports that were out there. And this woman is standing up there saying that when children see or hear about the March for Australia, they'll say it wasn't a very Australian thing at all. Well, then what was it? What was it? Look at the smirk on that woman's face. Duper's delight, taking great pleasure in gaslighting Australian people, smearing Australian people, all the while having her own pockets lined, the worst of the worst. Bravo. Bravo.
It won't look like the Australia they know, because Australia isn't a place where we spread hate and fear about foreigners.
No, that's not what you saw at the march, is it? Did you see any hate? Did you see any fear being spread? Or is she spreading it with a big grin like the Cheshire cat on her face?
Australia is a nation of foreigners, just like that wonderful song says. From all the lands on earth we come. And Australia isn't a place where we walk with Nazis. Australia is a place that went to war with Nazis.
Nazis? Did you see any? Maybe she was talking about the children. Maybe she was talking about the elderly. Maybe she was talking about the mothers and the fathers. Typical. The playbook is the same the world over.
No one who has ever tried to divide this country has ever succeeded, because the promise of multiculturalism is so much stronger. They stand for fear, we stand for fair. They stand for conflict, we stand for confidence. They propose that you live your life on their terms, while we propose that you live your life on yours. That is how we protect social cohesion, by having a strong society. And I know multicultural Victoria is so not part of the problem. It is part of the solution. And my vision is clear, and I put it to you with purpose this evening. Every Victorian matters. Every Victorian belongs. Every Victorian is equal.
Bravo, wonderful. Well read. She's been slipped the script. Those are not her words. She's a puppet. She's a mouthpiece. She's a Judas with a little smirk on her face. She's making good money off of the back of this. She'll retire wealthy off of the back of this. Those are not her words. Take the page away from her. What does she say? What can she say? Following the script. Following the script. So that's a report from Australia. I hope a lot of Australians get to see this. And if you do, please share the content and check out other content in this channel, because that's what's happening in Ireland. It's happening all over Europe. You're maybe aware of this, but you're maybe more acutely aware of this now because it's getting very, very close to your home. And the same with the people that listen from Ireland and the UK. Share this content. Let people see now what's happening in Australia. It's everywhere. And the playbook is almost identical no matter where you go. The smears, the slander, the othering, the lies, the manipulation. So anyway, leave me a comment below. Let me know what you're thinking. And if you're an Aussie, let me know where you're from down below in the comments section. Nice to have you on board. For now, I'm Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media, over and out.